All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. Another week has started here in our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada, as the X Zone comes around the world to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. And, of course, we're heard around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, and multiple platforms wherever you may be. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. For the broadcast schedule of the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the X Zone TV channel on SimulTV, www.simultv.com. Now, for all of you who love old-time radio classics, you know I'm talking about Dimension X, Dick Tracy, Flash Gordon, Lux Radio Theater. We're happy to announce that as of this morning at 7 o'clock a.m. Eastern, we launched our newest channel. It's called Old Time Classic Radio. And we're going to be broadcasting that 7/24, 365. And to listen to all these great shows with our compliments, all you need to do is go to otrc.ca. A lot of things happening here in the X Zone. So just keep advised that we're going to be letting you know as we go on and as we grow and as we turn on new TV channels, new radio channels, what's going on and how you, the members of the X Zone Nation, can participate. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is a gentleman we've had the pleasure of having on the show before. His name is Dean Tong, and he is an internationally noted author, certified forensic consultant, certified child forensic interviewer, and expert witness, concentrating in the areas of high conflict divorce, child custody, abuse accusations, sexual or child physical abuse, domestic violence, and everything else. Dean has asked us to do something very special tonight, and I when Dean told me what it was, I said, certainly, no problem. I think it's a great idea. And first of all, Dean, welcome back to the show. Always great having you with us. And tell us about the person that you want to dedicate the show to, being Don Mast.
Rob, thanks for having me back here. Third time, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my client's name was John Mast from Williston, North Dakota. And John, 10 days ago tonight, in Lewiston, Idaho, was to meet his two children for an unsupervised visit for the first time in 3 years. Mm-hmm. He hired me in his high-conflict divorce and custody battle back in late 2019. But instead of meeting those kids, Rob, he met the front end of a 9mm Glock. And he was shot 3 times by his ex-father-in-law in cold blood.
Oh, my God.
And murdered, right. And so the kids obviously lost their father, lost their maternal grandfather, as he is clearly going to be doing life in prison, if not the death penalty, mm-hmm. which I believe the state of Idaho does hold. And just a whirlwind of emotions, and surreal to the max, and totally preventable is the real kicker in this case.
First of all, I'd like to apologize because I said Don Mast, and it's John Mast. And is this common practice? Is this becoming more and more frequent that when a parent goes to pick up their children, they're faced with either a violent act from the other partner or from members of the family?
Well, sadly, yes, Rob. This is not my first homicide. The last one was the perpetrator 15 years ago in Reno, Nevada. Darren Mack killed his wife and shot his judge. Wife died, judge lived. This is the first time my client was the victim. But yes, it is common, too common. And, I encourage all my clients, even if they're not clients, to wear body cams. And now, with what's happened to John Mast, maybe you should consider purchasing a bulletproof vest off of Amazon.
Would it also be advisable for people to meet in public places or even at a police station where the exchange can take place in order to protect themselves as well as their loved ones?
I don't like personally the police station location, Rob. I think I think it makes kids anxious.
Okay.
And a little bit antsy, seeing guns and uniforms with cops walking in and out. I do like the public place, and in fact, when you read the media story, when you Google the name of John Mast, M-A-S-T, you'll see he was in a public place, a very lighted public place
Really?
at Rossora's grocery store in Lewiston, Idaho. In fact, the entire incident was caught on video.
Was there any hint that something like this could happen between the Mr. Mast and his father-in-law?
Well, there was, Rob, and when I get on these cases, look, allegations of child sexual assault are a very unpopular issue.
Right.
It's a taboo, right? I mean, reprehensible, heinous crime when it happens, but when it doesn't happen. And when you start off your show when reality is really fiction, a lot of these cases are fictitious. And I'm not saying that mother or maternal grandfather contrived this allegation against John, that it was premeditated, concocted, but it was clearly erroneous because the court made a finding of fact conclusion of law just in December that all the allegations against John Mast, which included the following: domestic violence against mother, raping the mother in the marriage, physical and child sexual abuse against both children, a son and a daughter. And mind you, we really have no empirical data that a man or father would molest both genders. It's one or the other. Mm-hmm. So that's how, inane those allegations are. First, they were made against the daughter, then the son. John was never arrested, but he was prevented from seeing his kids, unsupervised, unchaperoned, unmonitored, for about 3 years. And this was to be his first visit 10 days ago tonight on February 5th. And it just never happened because he was shot and left in cold blood. And clearly the mother had psychopathology here. I made this very clear to the attorneys. And the attorneys filed what's called a motion for independent medical or psychiatric examination of the mother, which the court denied. And look, Rob, I'm from Boston. And in Boston, we just have a different DNA. We're very aggressive. Mm-hmm. We like to get things done.
Yeah.
And we're hard to deal with, but we're usually competent people. And I was working with a couple of lawyers that, unfortunately, they have that laid-back lifestyle, if you will, where, well, if the court takes its time on issuing an order, so what? Well, that just doesn't sit well with me because while that's happening, the kids are alienated against the father. Their brains are being manipulated and brainwashed and programmed. And the kids are taking on this false belief system that the mother and the maternal grandparents already have. So, in psychology and medicine, this is called shared delusional disorder, where a parent is projecting her psychopathology onto the grandparents and then onto the children.
That was.
Problem. So,
yeah, go
anyway,
ahead.
Redacted. But to make a long story short, the judge denied our motion for IME. The mother, the maternal grandparents were never psychologically evaluated. Mm-hmm. The court never had its own expert to do a assessment of the child sex abuse allegations or custody, if you will. That never happened. So this maternal grandfather was a ticking time bomb, a combination of Semtex and C4, just waiting to blow, and he did. And, you know, in the brain, in the body, Rob, when somebody commits murder, you decompensate and suffer a psychotic break from reality.
Right.
That's clearly what happened with this gentleman 10 days ago tonight.
Why?
I'm not going to mention his name. All you have to do is Google John Mast, and you'll clearly get a plethora of media stories on the case.
But if both attorneys agree on something, why would the court deny it?
Well, you have to lay proper legal foundation, Rob. That foundation could have been laid properly with my affidavit. That never happened. I never gave an affidavit in this case, but clearly I should have, and my affidavit should have been attached as Exhibit A to the pleading, to the motion for independent medical or psychiatric examination of the mother. So when the court denied that motion, the court basically kept John Mast under the legal microscope. He was the bad guy. He was the one committing alleged abuse. And the court was clearly going to err on the side of caution, not the side of John Mast, but the side of the kids and who the kids lived with, which is the maternal grandparents in some type of David Koresh, if you will, fortress in Lewiston, Idaho.
Oh my God! In your expert opinion, would is this common practice? Are children and parents always at risk?
You don't read every day that your client is killed in cold blood, and here in this case, Rob, when you read the media story, which I think I sent to you this morning, the alleged assailant, the maternal grandfather, admitted to the police that he pre-planned this murder. He premeditated this murder, and by gosh, he probably had this planned a year or 2 years in advance. That John Mast was never going to get his hands on these kids, unsupervised, unchaperoned, unmonitored, ever again.
Wow. Let me ask you, how are the children in this case now?
Well, look.
And where are they?
Rob,
yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't know because, I mean, the supervised visitation notes that I have that preceded this murder had the daughter and the son wishing the father dead. The daughter would say to the father, "Beware of the swayer," meaning you're conning us, you're conning our mother, you're conning our maternal grandparents, and the court system that you did not touch us inappropriately. That's what they're telling their own father. Beware of the swayer, that he was a con man. Well, I had him psychosexually tested by my expert in Kentucky. John Mast wouldn't hurt a fly, let alone a human or especially a child. There was no propensity, no predilection, and no penchant to perpetrate any type of abuse. He obtained a clean bill of health. His cognitive distortion scale score was very low, meaning he wasn't trying to justify any abuse and con me and hoodwink the lawyers or anybody else because he didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And beyond the beware the swayer, the kids were spitting at their father during these visitations, throwing things at him, poking him in the chest, asking him to die and just go away. I mean, I usually see this, Rob, when I do see this, which is rarely, with teeny boppers, with 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. These kids were 6 and 8.
Oh, God.
Now they're 7 and 9. You don't see severe alienation, usually until the kids reach the high school years.
Listen, Dean, you and I have to take our first commercial break. This is, this is beyond the scale of belief. And once again, this seems to be, well, the fact that the courts look at the situation by the letter of the law, and it's been my experience as well that sometimes the way the case seems is not the way the case is, and at times you actually have to wonder if You and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, and my guest this hour is Dean Tong. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
o'clock on a Saturday. A regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. He says, son, can you play me a memory? I'm not really sure how it goes, but it's sad and it's sweet and I knew it complete when I wore a younger man's clothes.
Welcome back, everyone. Dean Tong is my special guest, and if you'd like to find out more about Dean, if you'd like to visit his website, it is abuse-excuse.com. That's abuse-excuse.com. Dean, during the brief commercial break that we had, you and I were discussing a part of this case where it actually took, 7 months for the court to come up or to acknowledge some of the proceedings?
Yeah, that's correct, Rob. I testified in this case at the trial by Zoom in May of 2020, 9 months ago, and the court did not adjudicate the findings of fact, conclusions of law on all the abuse issues or parenting time or custody until December, just a couple of months ago. So the court took over 6 months in coming to its judgment.
Is this normal in such a case?
Negative. And clearly, as we spoke, justice delayed is not only justice denied for the father, who's been falsely accused of abuse, but also those kids who were basically non-abused children being treated as truly molested victims. They had a therapist in Idaho who clearly was culpable of what we call confirmatory bias in psychology, a preconceived notion that John did this just based on the children's statements. And, the problem is, Rob, the children's statements have to be made spontaneously and contain reliability and trustworthiness in order for a judge or a jury, this case would never see a jury because John was never arrested, to be deemed credible. But on the other side of being spontaneous, reliable, and trustworthy, Rob, kids can be tainted, contaminated, and adulterated. They can be coached. They can be alienated. They're very suggestible. They're very impressionable. They can talk about Santa Claus or Tooth Fairy. They can talk about how Daddy touched my pee-pee. So it happens. There are a lot of studies on this. Dr. Stephen Ceci, C-E-C-I, did all the research on this back in the early to mid-'90s in his book, Jeopardy in the Courtroom. This is well-researched and founded science. And more times than not, these cases are not lies, but they are source misattribution errors, mistakes.
So how did the children end up with a grandfather?
Well, because the mother unilaterally abducted these kids from North Dakota to Idaho in late 2017, over 3 years ago, did not tell father she was leaving. She had already claimed domestic violence. That would not be adjudicated to be false until some 9 months later in September 2018, back in the North Dakota court. So she basically ran 12 to 15 hours away from North Dakota to Idaho and started to live with the maternal grandparents, her parents, with the children.
Unbelievable. So what do you think is going to happen in this case? What do you think the final outcome is going to be? And will the father ever get the children back?
Well, it's been 10 days, Rob, and already, obviously, there's a state of Idaho versus the alleged assailants case going on in Idaho. In fact, he has a hearing coming up here on Wednesday within the next 48 hours in Idaho.
Right.
To stand trial on murder one charges against my client. But beyond that, the kids, CPS, should already be involved. In your country, it's called Children's Aid Societies,
right.
CAS. And they should already be involved legally. Legally, they should have filed petitions in court to remove these kids from harm's way from an in-jeopardy, at-risk situation. Clearly, the grandmother has a psychiatric nurse background, so she might have been the trigger behind the scenes. And the old saying in these cases, Rob, from the standpoint of the true believers and validators and child savers, if you will, is kids don't lie. Kids are not mistaken about sexual assault. They must be believed and protected at all costs. How do I know this?
Right.
Well, you can go by the ideology. The ideology is in the the erroneous statistics that you see. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 4 boys are molested on billboards, public service announcements. It's just not true. You want to see the real data. That data is at my website on the homepage at abuseexcuse.com, compiled by Dr. David Finkelhor from the Crimes Against Children Laboratory from Durham, New Hampshire. Dr. Finkelhor did a 15-year study from 1992 to 2006, and the incidence of child sexual assault decreased by 50%, but the number of allegations and reports remained constant. So what does that tell you?
Dean, how did you get started in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, well, that's pretty much old documented news, Rob. I got started because I was accused of molesting my 3-year-old 35 years ago, back in 1985. And, of course, I was cleared. I was arrested, but I was cleared. But my case lasted 10 years of litigation. In any court you could wind yourself up in: juvenile court, criminal court, family court, appellate court, administrative court, lawsuit court, because I sued for a couple of $1 million and had the state of Florida CPS in court for 4 years on that situation in federal court. It was a nightmare. And when I was going through this, Rob, in the mid-'80s, we didn't have iPods and iPhones and iPads and computers and Internet and Google and Facebook. We didn't have any of that. No. We had none of that. All you had was a law library and Westlaw and LexisNexis, and that's it. We didn't even have the scientific studies. Dr. Ceci didn't publish his book, Jeopardy in the Courtroom, until 1995, some 10 years later, after my case surfaced. So I was winging this, based on what I had to work with. And the lawyers, lawyers don't get this stuff in law school. They don't get this stuff in law school. I came to your country. It was 99 or 2000, some 21 years ago. I came to Toronto, and I spoke alongside Walter Fox, who's a criminal defense barrister, solicitor there, one of the finest lawyers in your country. And he, and we talked about that. And he said, "Yeah, you're right, Dean. We don't get we get a smattering of this stuff in law school. I mean, this is all experience." Well, you want experience, I've got over 1 million hits at my website, which has been on the Internet now for almost 25 years. And I've consulted on over 25,000 cases since, 1990, over 30 years ago. No brag, just fact. And out of those 25,000, I've been retained in hundreds, probably closer to 1,000 cases during my career. And there are just not a lot of people that do what I do. And doing what I do, sadly, I have to babysit the work of attorneys and do my job too. And being from Boston, as I spoke, we don't like to lose. And not only did I lose a hell of a guy in John Mast, and I never met the man, just had several conversations with him over the phone. Of course, I saw him over a computer screen when I testified last May. I don't like losing clients, let alone losing cases. But yeah, this is surreal on steroids.
How did what effect has the Me Too movement have on everything that we're seeing today?
Well, I think it pours gasoline on the fire.
How so?
How so?
Yeah.
Because you get women like that Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who was on CNN all over the world telling everybody that Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh sexually abused her some 30 years ago to try to prevent him from becoming a Supreme Court justice. Of course, Kavanaugh was cleared, and the rest is history. But yeah, this movement, and mind you, there are rapists out there: Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Jeffrey Epstein, who's deceased. But, I mean, there are a lot more false and unfounded cases than there are real rapists out there. John Mast's case never had any physical findings. It was all he said, she said, they said. all out-of-court statements made for the truth of the matter asserted, what we call hearsay. Unfortunately for John and a lot of guys who get caught up in this web, the hearsay is admissible because it's the exception to the hearsay rule, so the judge lets it in because it's a sexual abuse outcry. So, as you know, the courts have to rule in children's best interest.
Exactly.
And oftentimes in these courts, family courts, judges, will make a mistake on the side of caution. But these judges haven't seen the data and the studies that I've seen, that I've had for some 25 years on my hard drive. And it's all novel news to them, and it's old news to me. And every time I have to testify, it's like giving a CLE seminar to lawyers and judges.
Okay, I understand that judges have to rule in the best interest of a child. That is no-brainer. But in the case of John Mast, was there a background check and a psychological profile done on the father-in-law?
No, I already said that, Rob. The maternal side of the family was unscathed, untested, no psychologicals, denied. If the judge had just appointed his own custody expert, PhD, to do a global custody evaluation to examine and vet the child abuse allegations, the domestic violence allegations, the rape allegations, but also decide who was best suited for custody, who was the more fit parent. Well, great. Guess what? Because the kids were around their maternal grandparents, those grandparents would have been administered the MMPI too, but they weren't.
All right.
And why not? Because the court never had its own expert. So the court failed miserably on several fronts in this case. Not only did it take too long to order, it never had its own expert to start with.
Okay, so has anything happened because of this case and because of the how it ended up with Mr. Mast being gunned down? Has anything been done, or is anything in the process to make sure that certain policies, procedures, and checkpoints are in place to make sure that this does not happen again?
Well, you're talking to that guy, Rob, and as long as they pay my expenses, I'm on the next jet plane. To get up there and testify before a congressional committee or a judicial body of authority to help invoke those changes in policy.
But when it comes to it
obviously won't help my client,
right,
John Mast, but it might help the next John Doe.
But in the United States, is each state responsible for its own custody custody proceedings and when it comes to children, or is it a federal legislation? No,
federal courts cannot rule on child custody, Rob. That's a violation of what's called the Rooker-Feldman and Younger abstention doctrines. That doesn't happen, can't happen. So yes, the answer is yes to your prior question. Each court, each jurisdiction has its own rules, but that rule really, as you already stated it, is the child's best interest decided by prima facie preponderance of evidence, 51%. It's a very slippery slope, more evidence than not. So apparently, while I testified last May and I helped Mr. Mast clear himself of all abuse allegations, I already mentioned all those allegations before, while I helped him do that, and of course his lawyers did also, this judge left this in that gray area.
All right, stand by, Dean.
He left this case and these kids in the gray area.
All right, Dean, stand by. I've got to take my news break at the bottom of the hour. Explanation, Dean Tong is our guest, www.abuse-excuse.com. We'll be back after this commercial break. Don't go away.
Now Paul is a real estate novelist who never had time for a wife. And he's talking with David, who's still in the Navy and probably will be for life.
And welcome back, everyone. That's Chilliwack with Arms of Mary. Previous to that, we were playing Billy Joel's Piano Man. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And if you'd like to find the broadcast schedule for the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. And for the X-Zone TV channel on SimulTV, www.simultv.com. And don't forget the new Old Time Radio Classics Broadcast Network, www.otrc.ca. Dean Tong is our guest this hour. His website is abuse-excuse.com. Dean, with the pandemic, the lockdowns, kids being, not being able to go to school, parents not being able to work, has there been a spike in cases where children are concerned?
Well, sure, Rob. And I know some articles were published that, child abuse may be more prevalent with the lockdowns because kids could be home with parents who may have mental health breakdowns and could be abusing their kids behind closed doors. I haven't seen any empirical studies to validate that.
Right.
And I've seen too many excuses by lawyers and judges using COVID as an excuse to backlog cases to go to trial. This is one of those cases. It took so long to get us an evidentiary hearing, May of 2020, that should have been litigated way before then. The domestic violence allegation was adjudicated false in September of 18.
Wow.
20 months prior to there, too. John Mass started being accused of abusing sexually his kids in late 2017, early 2018. So almost 2.5 years to get to a hearing on the sexual abuse assault allegations. When he finally is cleared, it takes the court another 6 months to arrive at that decision. Well, and the court arrives at that decision, and some 6 weeks later, John Mast is left in cold blood, murdered in a grocery store plaza in Lewiston, Idaho. Now, how does that happen? It happens because the attorneys, the judge, did not see this as a 911, did not have any expert appointed for the court to see all parties by Zoom, and to administer psychological testing to the maternal side, the grandmother, the grandfather, and the mother. That never happened. And to come to, judicious decision-making here expeditiously. It never happened. And to also see that when a kid hasn't been abused, that can be just as damning as a kid who's been raped. I've got all kinds of studies on that. And, I opined all this in court last May. And, what should happen here? Well, legislatively, what should happen here is parental alienation should be made a crime. Yeah, it should be evolved into a criminal act. If you're playing mind games with kids, if you're coaching them to make false allegations, if you're coaching those kids to believe those false allegations and have significant persecutory ideations, and the kids are as deluded as the mother, as the grandparents are, by God, there ought to be criminal penalties for that. But there aren't, and part of the reason there aren't is our own DSM, our Diagnostic Statistical Manual, our mental health Bible, if you will, doesn't even recognize parental alienation in it. So, look, kids can be weaponized. Kids can be used as pawns, weapons, and tools, as ammunition in a custody battle to falsely accuse a parent of incest for the purpose of gaining custody. Happens all the time. It's in my book, Elusive Innocence, Rob. I've published 3 over the last 30 years. This is not new news. And by God, these judges have got to do a better job. They're playing with people's lives. And while they're making life-altering decisions, they're taking too long to do so. And then when they do so, they're not arriving at competent decisions sometimes.
Yeah, the fact that it took nearly over or about 20 months for this case to be heard between 2018 and 2021, why are there not more judges on the bench that can take care of these cases to have them dealt with as swiftly as possible to assure the best care of the children are in fact being met with?
I think that decision, Rob, is up to the chief judge and the governor, who is either appointing judges or at least contributing to judges being elected. And federal judges, of course, are appointed. State judges are elected for the most part across America. And I think it also includes education and training. These judges have to, like social workers, child protection workers, have to go back and get better education and training. I mean, my books may be politically incorrect, but by God, they're based on truth and facts and science.
Why do you say they may be politically incorrect?
Well, because this is the taboo. This is the unpopular side of this divisive coin, Rob. No one likes to talk about, the media doesn't like to talk about the man who's falsely accused. They don't like to talk about the child or woman who's been sexually assaulted or raped. Because, look, behind this system, Rob, this child protection system that is charged by the legislature to do what it's doing, to protect kids at risk, this is a money engine. This is an industry. The amount of money, I mean, if you look at Dr. Ralph Underwager, wrote the foreword to my first book, Don't Blame Me, Daddy, published, next year it'll be 30 years, published in 92. And in that foreword he wrote, if you took the profit away from the problem in child protection, the solution would go a long way towards correcting itself. Wow.
Yeah.
And Florida boasts a $4 billion budget per year on child protection alone. Florida, my state of Florida. So it's a huge money-making industry when you talk about judges and lawyers and guardians ad litem and psychologists and child protection workers, child forensic interviewers and therapists, and outside independent contracted agencies which also help child protective services. I know we have a bunch of them here in Florida, in my state. Clearly, there's enough help there. There's enough professionals there to see both sides of this coin.
So
I told the judge, I said, Judge, I don't have any proof that the mother maliciously coached these kids to falsely accuse the father of incest, but there is evidence. There is evidence, there is anecdotal evidence, and the empirical evidence supports the anecdotal evidence that there were triggers. There were triggers involved in this case, such as the grandfather said under oath at his deposition that the mother was raped as a child by Mennonites and Amish in Wisconsin. Well, John Mass was Amish. Doesn't mean he molested his wife during the marriage or his kids during the same marriage.
So tell me, when it comes to this entire scenario where children's lives are at stake, as well as the parents' reputation, false accusations, false charges, why is it then that changes are not being made to protect all the parties? And where has the system failed? Where's the crack in the sidewalk in this case?
Well, the cracks, Rob, lie in lack of education and training, lack of expeditious litigation, and the court reaching out to outside experts in its jurisdiction to help itself. This court reached out to nobody. This court didn't appoint a guardian ad litem attorney on behalf of the kids, did not appoint a child custody evaluator, did not appoint a child sex abuse evaluator, did not appoint a parenting coordinator on the gravity of the alienation that was going on. Alienation in this case I had never seen in my 25-year career like I saw in this case. I never saw kids revile their father as much as I saw in this case. And I communicated all this to the attorneys.
Right.
The grandfather said under oath at his deposition, if nobody can see that this man, my son-in-law, X, molested these kids, my grandchildren. They're idiots. So right there, that deposition was taken last January, 13 months ago, some 13 months before he would kill the father of these kids. It was right there. The red flag was right there under oath at deposition. So apparently the judge was an idiot when he exonerated John Mast in December. Now, he didn't go after the judge, Rob. He went after the children's father. And when he walked up to John Mast at that grocery store 10 days ago today, he said 2 words, "Hi, John," and he pulled the trigger 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
Look, Rob, when I get a case, not only is it high conflict and emotions can supersede logic, and oftentimes, unfortunately, do so. These cases obviously are volatile, emotionally charged. But you have to know in your heart of hearts that there might be some psychopathology issues when a guy is saying something like that under oath in a house, in some little fortress, if you will, in Idaho, who carries weapons, clearly. He could be dangerous. I don't think anybody ever did an NCIC check on the guy until he probably got arrested 10 days ago.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Why aren't these checks done before the children are given to these new guardians? Like, it's common sense. I know they do that here.
Right. And granted, Rob, I think most judges will tell you that, Tong's case was the exception to the rule. This usually doesn't happen. So why, we don't want to expend the resources to have to do those checks.
Well, what does it
take people to do so?
What's it take to do a CPEC check or NCIC check? It just takes a name, date of birth, and about 15 seconds.
Right.
Isn't a child's life worth that? Isn't a guardian's life worth that? Isn't a parent's life worth that? It doesn't make sense to me.
And everybody cringes, Rob, and is sad and sullen and despondent after the fact. But while the case is going on, the system thinks it's doing the right thing by separating the kids from the alleged abuser, even though that alleged abuser proved by a preponderance of evidence those allegations were untrue.
This case is totally unreal. And the fact that it took so long from 2018 to 2021 to get in front of the judge on the case, to find out that there was no NCIC check done on the guardians who were going to receive and take care of the children, it just makes no sense. I think that there is a big flaw in the system, and I just thank God that you're there, Dean, trying to make sure that children and guardians are protected in the future.
Well, and if this gentleman somehow beat this rap and was on the outside, Rob, I probably would be the next targeted victim.
All right,
because
Dean.
Obviously, I was largely responsible for helping to clear this man.
Well, listen, buddy, we've got to take our final break, so please stand by. Exo Nation. Dean Tong is our special guest. What a guy. Visit his website, You ready for this? www.abuse-excuse.com. Unbelievable. We'll be back. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Dean Tong is our very special guest for this hour, www.abuse-excuse.com. First of all, Dean, I want to thank you so much for all that you're doing, and, God bless you for the great work that you're doing. And I just hope that more members of the legal community that deal with children will take the time and seek out the experience that you have to make the system a better system, protecting all parties.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
Is it a fallacy that when it comes to the separation of a family, that women are inclined to get custody of the children instead of the father?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the rule, Rob. I mean, it's a little better than it was when I was going through this 35 years ago in the mid-'80s. I think women are still getting custody, 80% or higher in cases. Now, the National Juvenile Court judges body may tell you differently. They may say in protracted litigious cases like Dean Tong's, fathers score much better. Well, I happen to have a fairly good track record. Not all my clients are men and fathers. I get women that hire me who've been falsely accused of coaching, falsely accused of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, failure to thrive, failure to protect. My practice is not gender biased or based. But I think, I think it's still judges, are obviously born from their mothers, male judges, and will err on the side of the female and children. Unfortunately, I'm not a real big proponent of shared parenting. I'm a proponent of presumptive joint custody right down the 50-yard line.
Sure.
Presumptive joint physical legal custody. Unless one parent is unfit or abusive or neglectful or a convict or living with a convict, those kids are not going to be at risk. The custody should be split down the middle because the science backs up my opinion that the best parent is both parents. And we it bears out in real life. Now these kids, John Mass kids, don't have a father. Now, will they have a pseudo father growing up? I imagine they're only 9 and 7, so they're only not even halfway to emancipation and adulthood. But it's beyond sad. The system needs to take heed from this case. And I'm hoping this judge, who I'm not going to mention on the air, his name, goes on the hot seat before the chief judge in that jurisdiction of this case, and gets a good talking to by the chief judge and, if necessary, the North Dakota Supreme Court. This just cannot happen, and it was preventable, but it wasn't prevented.
So where are the children now, Dean?
Well, I don't know, Rob. To my knowledge, unless there's some 911 breaking news, to my knowledge, they're still with the maternal family, the mother and the grandmother.
Is there any chance that the mother could actually get custody of the children again?
I don't know how. I mean, from what I heard, her father, the alleged assailant, used her gun. It was her gun, registered in her name. So, I mean, don't even know if she's been arrested. Don't know why she wouldn't be for accessory conspiracy to commit murder, accessory before the fact. I don't know what law enforcement is doing in Idaho. They haven't called me, and the kids should be clearly removed to the paternal side of this family immediately.
Holy cow! So, are you still working on this case? Will you have any active?
I've offered my continuing services pro bono at this point, Rob, to the paternal family if they need my help, but no one has reached out to me. And I understand they're still in the grieving process. They're still in the shock process. This just happened 10 days ago. They just buried John 48 hours ago.
Dean, in your opinion, what are the two most important pieces of evidence or data?
Well, in a case like this, Rob, which John on my mind, which I poured over because I'm nationally certified to do so, the forensic interviews of the children on DVD. Those DVDs are the nuts and bolts of a case like this because they're supposed to simulate the children's outcry to the mother. In this case, they were originally interviewed by a detective in Idaho, and I went over those interviews. And they were more contaminated than not, and I often find this to be the case. Leading questions, suggestive questions, closed-ended direct questions, repeated questions. They're not asking the kids, can you tell me what happened? Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me more about that? Their questions are more like, did your daddy touch your pee-pee? So they're putting words and thoughts and ideas into the minds of the kids, which is the very definition and essence of child suggestibility. That's what you don't want to do.
Is there any such thing as a clean break between parents where, the parents decide that, listen, breaking up is the best thing for the family. We're not going to argue. We're not going to do anything that would show animosity to the children, We'll both work it out. And, fine, I'm the dad. I'll pay so much money into child support and so on and so forth. Or is that the rare occasion where these kind of cases happen?
Well, in most states, I know my state included, Rob, mediation is required before litigation. At least it's attempted to be required before litigation. You have to go to mediation and attempt to resolve your differences out of court,
right,
without contentious litigation. Now, when someone says it's my way or the highway, and marital assets and child support and alimony and parenting time and custody of the kids become at issue,
right?
If those issues cannot be resolved at mediation, conciliation, arbitration, where the parties can wave the white flag, quid pro quo, then I guess it's going to be Mike Tyson time in a court of law. But Mike Tyson time doesn't mean is not an invitation to get this wrong. It's not an invitation to put this off for years to come to a resolution.
Do parents understand when they're going through this process how it affects the child, that it affects the child in their school, it affects their psychological daily life? It has a lasting impact on them.
Yes,
and does
media that impact, Rob, has a fairly novel term to it. At least over the last 22 or 3 years, it's called ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences. And once a kid scores an ACE score of 4 or higher, that is clearly clinically significant. And I'm talking about depression, anxiety, whether you've been raped or falsely a victim of false rape, as in this case, false accusations. Your different sources of trauma that you have incurred. Once you hit that score of 4, this can, psychosomatic issues like stomach aches and headaches and nausea and vomiting, anxiety, depression can exacerbate to, severe, major depression, and also suicidal ideations and self-mutilation, and certainly suicide or homicide cannot be ruled out. And you got to wonder where these two little kids are going to wind up.
Exactly.
10, 20, 30 years from now. Thinking about what happened to their father on February 5th, 2021.
Is there any data to show whether or not children who come from a family that has been split up, where there's been a lot of turmoil within the breakup as well as accusations and violence, is there any data to support that this would lead to the use of alcohol and or drugs in the child's life?
Well, sure. I haven't seen a lot of those studies, the substance abuse, but it goes along with the territory. That kids can go down that road, even prostitution. So, And look, there was a history to this case. Like I said earlier, the grandfather said, his daughter was raped as a child by Amish and Mennonites.
Right.
So there was a belief system already going on in that household. And all of a sudden, these kids are disclosing alleged sexual assault. And let me tell you, Rob, a man's brain is psychophysiologically hardwired. You engage in consensual relations and intimate relations with an adult woman your entire life. You don't all of a sudden, this guy was 40, John Mass. You don't all of a sudden in your late 30s decide you're going to molest prepubescent children. It doesn't work that way.
No.
The brain does not work that way. So, nobody was looking at the science here. And not only were there psychovalves readily available to administer to the maternal side that never were, there were neuroimaging tests. Well, heck yeah, the judge could have ordered a SPECT scan. If you go to the website brainplace.com, SPECT, that expert is here in my state of Florida, Dr. Daniel Amen. PET scan, MRI, CAT scan of her brain. And sure, they're expensive, but our most precious resource are our kids, right?
Exactly.
So if you have to incur those expenses, you do it for the children. I mean, by God, if you're going to rule in the best interest of children, then you've got to go through every possible test you can go through to get to your answer. Maybe the problem was not Mr. Tong's client, but it was the accusing side. We never really looked at that side, did we?
With all the
but who committed the murder in this case? It was the accusing side, not the receiving end side of sex abuse allegations.
Dean, is there any data to support that when the school shootings were happening, Columbine, for example, were these children the product of split homes, messy divorces?
Yeah, I think some were, Rob. I don't have a dissection of every child, who was involved in that ordeal, or the Newtown ordeal in Connecticut. Obviously there have been several this millennium. But yeah, I mean, we all know that children of divorce are not going to do as well, anecdotally speaking, and somewhat empirically speaking, as children from cohesive families.
Hey, Dean, I hate to
children who are allowed to spend time with both parents equally.
Dean, I hate to do this, but we've run out of time.
I'm against the shared parenting because, for all intents and purposes, shared parenting is either Disneyland dad or Disneyland mom visitation rights.
Hey, Dean, I hate to do this, but we've run out of time for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Continued success. I love what you do, and man, I certainly am glad that you're out there for the kids. All right, Exo Nation, if you'd like to get more information on our guest this hour, Dean Tong, his website is www. You ready? abuse-accuse.com. That's www.abuse-excuse.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break with the news at the top of the hour as the X-Zone continues with yours truly from our broadcast center and studios in Crystal Beach, Ontario, Canada. Once again, the website for Dean Tong is www.abuse-excuse.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. Don't go away.